The displays showed the next phase of the Concordat's plans: joint exploration missions to unexplored regions of the galaxy, combined scientific expeditions, multicultural colonies on new worlds. The future was being shaped not by the will of one species, but by the combined dreams of many. The Drachnid Empire ruled through fear for over 1,000 years. Maya's voice softened. They believed that was the only way to maintain order in the galaxy. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show that cooperation is stronger than coercion, that diversity breeds innovation, and that the greatest adventures lie not in conquest, but in discovery. Admiral Chen smiled as she watched representatives who had once been mortal enemies engaged in animated discussion about joint projects. The Nexeri crystalline form vibrated in harmony with Kethran energy fields, while Drachnid quantum mathematicians collaborated with human scientists on new theories of spacetime. 1 year ago, we broke the chains of empire, Maya concluded. Today, we forge the bonds of partnership. The galaxy is entering an age of wonders, not because one species commands it, but because all species contribute to it. As applause filled the chamber, expressed in dozens of different ways by dozens of different species, humanity's leaders shared knowing looks. The grand strategy had succeeded beyond their hopes. The galaxy had been transformed not through destruction, but through careful planning, precise execution, and an understanding that the strongest changes are those that everyone chooses to embrace. In orbit above Mars, ships of every species moved in harmonious patterns, their crews working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization where power came from cooperation rather than domination. The former Drachnid warships, now converted to exploration vessels, carried mixed crews to the edges of known space, their weapons replaced with scientific instruments. The age of empire was over. The age of discovery had begun. And humanity, which had orchestrated this transformation through patience and wisdom rather than force, stood ready to help guide the galaxy into an era of unprecedented peace and progress. The last empire had fallen, but what rose in its place was far greater than any empire could have dreamed of being. The breaking point. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Earth's orbital diplomatic station, watching the crystalline ships of the interstellar Concordat arrive for what would be humanity's last appearance before their governing council. After 2 centuries of increasing restrictions and thinly veiled subjugation, everything was about to change. The Concordat had ruled the known galaxy for millennia, comprising 12 elder species who viewed themselves as the guardians of civilization. They had welcomed humanity into their fold 3 centuries ago, but that welcome had come with countless strings attached. Every human advancement was met with new regulations, every innovation with fresh restrictions, all in the name of maintaining galactic stability. Their early, noted director Marcus Webb, joining her at the window. His dark features reflected in the reinforced glass as he adjusted his formal diplomatic attire. The Concordat is never early. They're nervous, Sarah replied, allowing herself a small smile. Our delegation has missed the last 3 summits. They're here to demand answers. The Concordat ships arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern above Earth, a display of their technological precision and power. But Sarah knew what they didn't. Those ships, impressive as they appeared, were relics of stagnant thinking. Inside the station's grand chamber, representatives from the 12 elder species took their seats in rising tiers of crystalline platforms. Their forms varied wildly. The insectoid Vex with their iridescent carapaces, the ethereal luminary who seemed made of living light, the massive silicon-based Petrovar who moved with ponderous gravity. High Chancellor Vaxtol of the Vex rose to speak, his mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was a sign of agitation. The Terran Federation has violated 17 major protocols in the past solar revolution. You have exceeded your allocated industrial expansion by 300%. Your colonial development has breached prescribed limitations. And most disturbing, you have refused mandatory inspections of your research facilities. Director Webb stood calmly at the center of the chamber. High Chancellor, distinguished members of the Concordat, for 3 centuries, humanity has attempted to work within your framework. We have submitted to your restrictions, accepted your oversight, and tried to be the junior partners you demanded we remain. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. But your framework is fundamentally flawed. It doesn't seek to elevate new species. It seeks to contain them, to prevent any challenge to your established order. We now reject these constraints. The chamber erupted in overlapping alien voices. The luminary representatives flickered in agitation, their light forms pulsing with alarm. The Petrovar's crystalline structures ground against each other in what humans had learned was laughter. Reject. Vaxtol's translator barely managed to convey his incredulity. Your species cannot simply reject the Concordat's authority. The consequences would be severe. Sarah stepped forward then, her admiral's uniform carrying its own authority. Would they? Let's examine those consequences. You believe you could enforce your will through military action, through economic sanctions, through technological superiority. She smiled. We've spent 50 years letting you believe you knew the full extent of human capabilities. You don't. With perfect timing, holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing real-time footage from across human space. Massive shipyards previously hidden in dimensional pockets. Quantum computing arrays that made the Concordat's best technology look primitive. Energy production systems that defied their understanding of physics. This is impossible, one of the luminary whispered, their light dimming in shock. Our monitoring systems saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Webb finished. Every restriction you placed on us forced us to innovate in ways you never imagined. Every regulation became a challenge to overcome. You thought you were containing our growth. You were actually accelerating it. Sarah touched a control on her wrist, and new images appeared. Dozens of worlds, not just human colonies, but independent species that had been denied Concordat membership. On each, human technology was helping them advance, grow, and reach for the stars. We're not here to negotiate, she declared. We're here to inform you of what's already happened. As of this moment, the Terran Federation and 32 allied species are forming the Free Stars Alliance. We withdraw from the Concordat, reject its authority, and stand ready to defend our independence. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just been preparing to leave. They'd been building an entirely new power structure right under the Concordat's nose. This is madness, Vaxtol finally said. You would destroy millennia of stability. We would replace stagnation with growth. Webb countered. Fear with hope. Restriction with opportunity. The galaxy is changing, High Chancellor. The only question is whether the Concordat will change with it or fade into history. As if to punctuate his words, new ships began appearing in Earth orbit, vessels of designs the Concordat had never seen, representing species they had dismissed or ignored. The balance of power wasn't shifting. It had already shifted. The human delegation turned to leave, but Sarah paused at the chamber's entrance. We'll maintain diplomatic channels, she offered. When you're ready to discuss a new relationship between equals, we'll be waiting. But the old order ends today. As they walked away, the sounds of argument and panic followed them. The Concordat's representatives were already turning on each other, blame and accusations flying. But Sarah and Marcus shared a quiet look of satisfaction. Humanity had done what it did best, found a way through impossible odds, united others behind a common cause, and changed the rules of the game entirely. The time of restrictions was over. The age of freedom had begun. Silent revolution. The Concordat's emergency session had been running for 3 days straight. In the great crystalline chamber that had stood for millennia, the representatives of the 12 elder species faced a reality they had never anticipated. First Speaker Ixel of the Luminary hovered before the assembly, her light form pulsing with distress as she presented the latest intelligence. Our deep space sensors have detected quantum anomalies throughout what we thought was empty space. The humans didn't just hide their advancement. They built an entire shadow infrastructure in dimensional pockets we didn't know could exist. Recordings played across the chamber's holographic displays, showing massive structures phasing in and out of normal spacetime. Shipyards larger than solar systems, energy collectors that harvested power from multiple dimensions, and computational arrays that made the Concordat's most advanced AI systems look like primitive calculators. High Chancellor Vaxtol's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. How did we miss this? Our monitoring systems were supposed to be foolproof. A Petrovar elder, his crystalline form darkened with concern, shifted forward. We're asking the wrong question. The real question is, what else have we missed? As if in answer, new reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The 32 species that had joined humanity's Free Stars Alliance weren't just minor civilizations. They were strategically crucial ones. The Meridians, masters of biotechnology. The Quantum Drift, beings of pure energy who could navigate hyperspace. The Silicon Collective, experts in planetary engineering. They chose their allies carefully, noted Commander Zara, the Vex's military advisor. Each species brings unique capabilities that complement human innovation. While we watched their official research institutes, they were building collaborative networks with species we had written off as insignificant. In a secure analysis center deep within the Concordat's headquarters, Dr. Lyra of the Luminary was making a disturbing discovery. She had been reviewing centuries of human development patterns, and a clear picture was emerging. "Look at this," she called to her colleagues, bringing up a complex data visualization. The display showed hundreds of seemingly unrelated human projects and innovations over the past 50 years. But when viewed as a whole, a pattern emerged. Each restriction the Concordat had placed on humanity had been turned into an opportunity. Banned from expanding conventional energy production, they developed zero-point energy. Limited in traditional manufacturing, they perfected matter synthesis. Restricted from certain areas of space, they learned to fold space itself. They used our regulations as a roadmap, Lyra whispered. Every time we told them what they couldn't do, we showed them exactly where to innovate. Meanwhile, on the edges of known space, more evidence of humanity's hidden progress emerged. The Concordat's fastest scout ships encountered human vessels that seemed to ignore the known laws of physics. They didn't just travel through space. They manipulated it, creating shortcuts and passages that shouldn't have been possible. But it was on the diplomatic front that the true magnitude of humanity's revolution became clear. Species that had been denied Concordat membership for centuries were now flourishing under human guidance. The Free Stars Alliance wasn't just a political entity. It was a completely new approach to galactic civilization. They're offering membership without demanding submission, reported a luminary diplomat, their light flickering with worry. No technology restrictions, no production quotas, no cultural mandates, just mutual support and shared knowledge. The impact was immediate and devastating to the Concordat's authority. 3 more species announced their intention to join the alliance within days of its formation. Each had been under Concordat observation, deemed not ready for full galactic participation. Now they were choosing a different path. In a private meeting room, High Chancellor Vaxtol consulted with the Concordat's inner council. "We could deploy the fleet," suggested one elder. "Show them the consequences of defiance, and risk revealing how far behind we've fallen," countered another. "Those ships we saw weren't just advanced. They were operating on principles we don't understand." The truth was becoming unavoidable. Humanity hadn't just caught up to the Concordat technologically. They had surpassed it. While the elder species had focused on maintaining their position through regulation and restriction, humans had been driving innovation across hundreds of worlds. A junior analyst, reviewing data from border monitoring stations, made perhaps the most chilling discovery. The humans weren't militarizing their space or fortifying their borders. They were simply continuing their work, expanding their networks, and welcoming any species that wished to join them. They didn't need to fight the Concordat. They had already made it obsolete. As the emergency session entered its fourth day, the representatives of the 12 elder species faced a stark choice. They could cling to their old methods of control and watch their influence fade, or they could accept that the galaxy had entered a new age, one where innovation and collaboration would replace restriction and hierarchy. The silent revolution was complete. Humanity hadn't just broken free from the Concordat's constraints. They had rewritten the rules of galactic civilization itself. The New Dawn Initiative, on the verdant world of Nexus Prime, chosen as the headquarters for the Free Stars Alliance, representatives from 33 species gathered in an open-air amphitheater. Unlike the Concordat's crystal spires and imposed hierarchies, here all members sat as equals under an azure sky. Admiral Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's chief representative to the Alliance, stood at the center of the gathering. Behind her, holographic displays showed hundreds of worlds, each representing a civilization that had expressed interest in joining their coalition. "The age of restriction is over," she declared, her voice carrying across the assembled delegates. "Today we launched the New Dawn Initiative, a comprehensive program to share knowledge, technology, and resources across all member worlds." The Alliance's first major project was already underway. On the dying world of Kethara, home to a species the Concordat had deemed too primitive for assistance, human terraforming technology worked alongside Meridian biotechnology and Silicon collective engineering. What the Concordat had declared impossible was being accomplished in months rather than centuries. Dr. Xin Yu, Earth's leading xenoscientist, worked directly with the Ketharan scientists, teaching them while learning from their unique perspectives. The Concordat's greatest mistake, she explained to a gathering of students, was assuming that advancement must follow a single path. They forgot that diversity drives innovation. In orbit above a dozen worlds, massive education centers were being constructed. These weren't just schools. They were civilization accelerators, designed to help species advance at their own pace while avoiding the pitfalls that had plagued others. The quantum drift provided instant communication links between these centers, allowing real-time sharing of knowledge across the galaxy. But it was in the field of energy production that the Alliance made its most dramatic impact. The human-developed zero-point reactors, combined with Meridian organic computing and quantum drift spatial manipulation, created an energy grid that spanned entire sectors. Worlds that had been dependent on the Concordat's carefully controlled resources suddenly found themselves energy independent. "We're not just building infrastructure," Director Marcus Webb explained to a gathering of Alliance leaders. "We're creating a new model of galactic civilization, one based on mutual growth rather than controlled development." The contrast with the Concordat's approach couldn't have been starker. Where the elder species had demanded centuries of observation before allowing any advancement, the Alliance offered immediate assistance while respecting local autonomy. Species were free to develop their own cultures and technologies, with guidance available but never imposed. On the frontier world of Lyra 9, this new approach was proving transformative. The local species, silicon-based crystalline beings, had been denied Concordat membership for their aggressive expansion tendencies. The Alliance instead helped them channel their drive into sustainable development and scientific research. Within months, they had made breakthroughs in crystal computing that surprised even their human advisors. The Alliance's military strategy was equally revolutionary. Instead of the Concordat's model of centralized fleets and restricted weapons technology, each member species was encouraged to develop their own defensive capabilities while contributing to a mutual defense network. Human quantum communications technology ensured that help was always just moments away. "We're not building an empire," Sarah reminded the Alliance Council during a strategy session. "We're creating a network of equals. Our strength comes from our diversity, not our uniformity." This philosophy was tested when the first crisis struck. A stellar anomaly threatened 3 Alliance worlds with deadly radiation. The response demonstrated everything that made the new coalition different. Human ships worked alongside quantum drift navigators, to create safe passages through space-time. Meridian biotechnology protected vulnerable populations. Silicon Collective engineers built radiation shields. What could have been a catastrophe became a triumph of cooperation. As news of these successes spread, more species began to question the Concordat's authority. The Alliance's open channels brought information that the elder species had long suppressed. Species learned of opportunities they had been denied, of advances that had been hidden, of possibilities they had never imagined. In the Alliance's research centers, breakthrough after breakthrough emerged from the cross-pollination of ideas. Technologies that the Concordat had declared impossible or too dangerous were being safely developed and implemented. The old restrictions were revealed as what they had always been, tools of control rather than genuine safeguards. They called us reckless, Dr. Yu noted in her journal, but look at what we've achieved in just months of true cooperation. The Concordat spent millennia maintaining stability. We're proving that controlled change is better than enforced stagnation. The New Dawn Initiative was more than a development program. It was a complete reimagining of how civilizations could interact. It offered hope to species that had been told they must wait centuries for advancement. It provided opportunities to those who had been deemed unworthy of progress. Most importantly, it demonstrated that cooperation and innovation could coexist with safety and stability. As the first phase of the initiative neared completion, Sarah stood again before the Alliance Council. The holographic displays now showed not just member worlds, but a galaxy being transformed. "This is just the beginning," she promised. "Together, we're not just reaching for the stars, we're reshaping the very nature of galactic civilization." Echoes of change. The Concordat's Grand Council chamber, once a symbol of unshakable power, now echoed with discord. The 12 elder species, who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, found themselves facing an unprecedented crisis: irrelevance. High Chancellor Vaxtol watched as another report came in of a long-subjugated species declaring independence. The Proxians, masters of quantum mathematics who had been denied full membership for 12 centuries, had publicly announced their intention to join the Free Stars Alliance. "This cannot continue," declared Representative Zinn of the Petrovar, his crystalline form vibrating with anger. "We must take action before more systems fall under human influence." But what action could they take? The Concordat's finest scientists had analyzed the Alliance's technological achievements, and the results were devastating. Human innovation, combined with the unique capabilities of their allies, had produced advances that the elder species couldn't match. In a secure research facility on the Concordat throne world, Dr. Lyra of the Luminary made a startling discovery. "Look at these energy signatures," she told her colleagues, displaying readings from Alliance space. "They're not just using technology more advanced than ours, they're using principles we never even considered possible." The implications were clear. While the Concordat had spent millennia perfecting existing technologies, humanity had been asking entirely different questions. Their primitive approach had led them down paths the elder species had never explored. Meanwhile, cracks were appearing in the Concordat's carefully maintained facade of unity. The Luminary, always the most progressive of the elder species, began questioning centuries of policy. "We restricted them because we feared their potential," First Speaker Ixel argued in a closed session. "In doing so, we may have created exactly what we feared. But worse, we showed every developing species that our leadership was based on control rather than wisdom." The economic impact was becoming impossible to ignore. Worlds that had been dependent on Concordat technology and trade were now turning to the Alliance. The human-led coalition offered something the elder species never had: the freedom to grow at their own pace, with support rather than restrictions. On the frontier world of Ta City, a Concordat observation post recorded a scene that would have been unthinkable months before. Human ships worked alongside former enemies, helping a pre-spaceflight civilization deal with a natural disaster. There were no demands for submission, no technological restrictions, just freely offered aid. "They're rewriting every rule we established." Commander Zora reported to the Concordat Military Council. And worse, they're proving our rules were unnecessary. The final blow to the old order came from an unexpected quarter. The Syndicate, a species of energy beings who had served as the Concordat's primary energy providers for millennia, announced they had been in secret negotiations with the Alliance. The humans had shown them new forms of energy manipulation that made their traditional methods obsolete. In the Concordat's diplomatic corps, panic set in. Junior members began defecting, taking with them centuries of accumulated knowledge. The carefully maintained hierarchy was crumbling from within. Perhaps, suggested an ancient Petrovar sage, we should consider that our fear of chaos led us to create something worse than chaos: stagnation. The Alliance's success was proving infectious. Species that had never questioned the Concordat's authority began to ask dangerous questions. Why had technological advancement been so carefully controlled? Why were some species kept waiting for centuries, while others were fast-tracked to membership? The answers, when they emerged, painted a damning picture of systematic suppression. In a desperate bid to maintain control, the Concordat attempted to impose stricter regulations on its remaining member worlds. The result was predictable. 3 more species announced their withdrawal within days. On Alliance worlds, a different story was unfolding. The freedom to innovate had unleashed a wave of creativity across hundreds of civilizations. Problems that had stumped the Concordat for centuries were being solved through collaboration and fresh perspectives. Dr. Yu, working with a team of mixed-species scientists, observed the phenomenon in action. The Concordat thought chaos would result from unrestricted development. She noted in her research logs. Instead, we're seeing natural patterns of cooperation emerge. Species are finding their own paths while learning from each other's successes and failures. The humans had done more than break free from the Concordat's control. They had proven that control itself was unnecessary. The galaxy, it seemed, could govern itself through cooperation rather than coercion. As the Concordat's influence continued to wane, High Chancellor Vaxtol faced a difficult truth. The elder species had spent millennia trying to prevent the rise of a power that could challenge their authority. In doing so, they had created exactly that, not through force or conquest, but through the simple act of offering a better way. We thought we were protecting the galaxy, he admitted in a private session with his advisors. Instead, we were holding it back, and now we must decide. Do we adapt to this new reality, or do we fade into history as a cautionary tale? The answer to that question would determine not just the future of the Concordat, but the shape of galactic civilization itself. Balance of power. The moment of truth arrived sooner than anyone expected. In the neutral space between Alliance and Concordat territory, 2 fleets faced each other. The Concordat had deployed everything they had. Massive battleships that had kept the peace for millennia. Facing them was something entirely different. A combined fleet of Alliance vessels, each representing a different species approach to space travel. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Horizon, watching the tactical displays. The Concordat fleet was impressive, a testament to thousands of years of refined engineering. But it was also predictable, bound by traditions and technologies that hadn't fundamentally changed in centuries. "They're broadcasting," announced her communications officer, the High Chancellor himself. High Chancellor Vaxtol's image appeared on the main screen, his mandibles set in what humans had learned was an expression of grim determination. "This has gone far enough," he declared. "The Concordat cannot allow the galaxy to descend into chaos. Return to your designated spaces and submit to proper oversight, or we will be forced to act." Sarah smiled slightly. "High Chancellor, look at your sensors. Really look. What do you see?" Around the Alliance fleet, space itself seemed to ripple. The quantum drift ships phased in and out of normal spacetime. Meridian bioships pulsed with living energy. Human vessels generated fields that defied conventional physics. And dozens of other species added their own unique approaches to space travel and combat. "We see a collection of undisciplined technologies that threaten the stability we have maintained for millennia," Vaxtol responded, But there was uncertainty in his voice. "No," Sarah countered. "You see the future. Not chaos, but diversity. Not a threat to stability, but a new kind of order, one based on cooperation rather than control." As if to emphasize her point, a new group of ships appeared at the edge of the battlefield. The Syndicate's energy vessels, once the Concordat's most reliable allies, took position alongside the Alliance fleet. They were followed by ships from 3 other elder species, including the Luminary. First Speaker Ixel's glowing form appeared next to Vaxtul in the transmission. "The old ways are ending, High Chancellor. I and others have chosen to embrace change rather than resist it. The tension in space could have ignited a war that would have torn the galaxy apart. Instead, something unprecedented happened. From the ranks of the Concordat fleet, ships began breaking formation, not to attack, but to stand down. Centuries of rigid hierarchy were dissolving in the face of undeniable reality. You don't need to surrender," Sarah broadcast to all ships. "The Alliance doesn't seek dominion. We invite you to join us in building something new. Your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom, these are valuable. But they must be offered freely, not imposed by force." In the Concordat's fleet, more ships powered down their weapons. The elder species faced a choice: cling to their fading authority and risk everything in a war they couldn't win, or adapt to a new reality. High Chancellor Vaxtul was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of history. "For millennia, we thought we were preserving civilization. We didn't realize we were preserving our own power at the cost of progress. The next few hours would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization truly changed, not through battle or conquest, but through the simple recognition that there was a better way." The Concordat didn't surrender, it transformed. 1 year later, the galaxy was a very different place. The Alliance's council chamber on Nexus Prime had expanded to include former Concordat species, now equal partners in shaping the future. The elder species' experience and knowledge, freed from the constraints of control, proved invaluable in helping younger civilizations advance safely. Sarah stood with Director Webb, watching representatives from 100 worlds work together on the chamber floor. "Did you ever think it would end like this?" Webb asked. "Not an ending," Sarah corrected him. "A beginning. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our innovation. It was our ability to imagine a different way. We showed the galaxy that progress doesn't have to mean chaos, that advancement doesn't require control, and that diversity is stronger than uniformity." Across the galaxy, the results were undeniable. Worlds that had been held back for centuries were flourishing. New technologies emerged from the combination of different species approaches. Problems that had seemed insurmountable under the old system were being solved through collaboration. The former High Chancellor, now serving as a cultural advisor to newly emerging civilizations, summed it up best. "We thought we were protecting the galaxy from chaos. The humans showed us that what we called chaos was actually the natural order of things. Different species, different approaches, different paths, all contributing to a greater whole." As the sun set on Nexus Prime, casting the council chamber in golden light, the galaxy continued its transformation. The age of restriction was over, replaced not by chaos as the Concordat had feared, but by something far more powerful: the combined potential of thousands of species, each free to contribute their unique perspective to the grand tapestry of civilization. Humanity had done more than break free from control. They had shown the galaxy how to be free, and in doing so, had helped create something greater than any single species could have achieved alone. The future was no longer a carefully controlled path, but an endless frontier of possibilities, waiting to be explored together.